Hey everybody, welcome to a Cannabis Correction blog. I believe this is 14, and sorry if my voice is a little subdued, but it is very late. We are in the apartment right now, and the rest of my family is sleeping, so I don't want to wake up anybody. But on the last blog I said I'd be talking about neuro-linguistic programming. I lied. I want to cover that on another day, only because I sketched out this for you guys. The illogical drug war. See, this is what you have to do when you don't have a computer, and you revert back to pencil and paper, but it is still as valid a tool to take down the liars. Now, if you don't have any pretense to this, and I don't expect you to, let me tell you why I did this. I'm currently taking a logic course at my community college, and I did this exactly for the fact that you think I'm trying to be the most logical person I can be, not just for these blogs, but just in life in general. I want to be a scientist. I think scientifically. I'm always curious, so logic seemed like a good course for me. And through logic, I've gained a lot of new tools to debunk a lot of the myths. And I can show you how illogical these things truly are. So, let me take the time to explain what sum means in logic. I hope that it's somewhat clear, but it says sum. And what sum in logic means is at least one. So, keep that in mind. It also does not mean that if there are some, that there's also some that are not. An example that I could give that my teacher gave in class was that if I was to select any commenters and ask you, have you done crack cocaine today? And you said no, I can't assume that there are some of my viewers that have had crack cocaine today, although it could happen, but I can't assume. And what logic does is never make assumptions, breaks it down in form. So, what the argument is this for the drug war, the entire drug war, not just cannabis, but do keep in mind there are potent drugs out there. I don't want you to look at this and say, well, Diogenes said the drug war is illogical, so every drug is okay. No, you'd be making a I-prop conclusion, which is, as you'll see in a moment, so illogical that you should be bashed in the head. Actually, no, you should just take a logic course. Why revert to violence? Fucking culture, man. Even has me on the violent path. Anyway, if some people are addicts and some people take drugs, then it follows that everyone taking drugs becomes an addict. That's the argument. That's the argument they're making here. Now, what I'm going to provide is a counterexample. And the counterexample method takes the form of the argument, which you can see here with A, B. It replaces the subject and predicates with letter values. So our subject here is people. Predicate is addicts. Addicts. This R would be your copula, but you don't need to know that. Anyway. So, our skeleton is as such. People will assign A, so everywhere in your argument equation, I suppose you could say, it will be assigned with the letter A. Addicts have the value of B. Drugs have the value of C. Let's see what that looks like down here. What we come up with is some A are B, some A are C, so it follows that all C are B. Sounds logical? Well, let's fill in some of those values, shall we? Let A be cats, let B be mammals, and let C be animals. And instead what you find is that they're really making the argument that some cats are mammals, some cats are animals, therefore all animals must be mammals. Now, we know how illogical that is from all the different classifications of animals there are, like reptiles and avians and alike. but it is kind of hidden in this. And this is the myth that's perpetuated. This is what they come into all young kids' dare classes to here in America and try to perpetuate. That there are some people that do drugs, there are some people that are addicts. Therefore, if you do drugs, you'll become an addict. Now, of course, they don't break it down like that. They more or less focus on the conclusion. They just say everyone, which is really all, take drugs and become addicts. They don't show you their premises, but that's the premise. Those are the premises. There are some people that are addicts, true. There are some people that do drugs, also true. But you cannot conclude from that if you do drugs, you'll become an addict. That's like saying all animals are mammals. They're clearly not. Now, what you may be confused if you haven't taken a logic course like me is the sum. And again, some cats are mammals. Well, aren't all cats mammals? Well, yes. But I want to remind you, some in logic means at least one. So at least one cat that we have confirmation of what its anatomy is, at least one cat is a mammal. And one cat is an animal. Good. It's not a Homo sapien. Good. However, all animals are mammals? Not at least one animal is a mammal? See, that's where they go wrong. If they said some people become addicts when doing drugs, that would be correct. Now, the addiction rate for cannabis is zero zilch. But you know what? There are those outliers. I was about to say outlillers, but there are those outliers in the data table that have some people being addicted to cannabis. And you know what? I just believe it's a weak mind. I believe it's an addictive personality who, if it wasn't cannabis taking, would probably be addicted to gambling or some other thing. Really, it's just cannabis that got to them first, and they happen to have an addictive nature. But you can see clearly from this logical counterexample that I've given, well, illogical counterexample of their illogical argument here, that it's useless. It's completely debunked on this one piece of paper here. The whole drug war is a sham. Because that's the logic they're using. And guess what? It's illogical. Now, what this down here is, I do have some extra time, so if you don't want to really get a little bit of a lecture into logic, then just end the video, and I'll see you in another Cannabis Correction blog. But if you want to know a little bit more, what these two propositions are I propositions. They are particular affirmative, which means the sum, being the quantifier for how many, at least one, are is the quality. Are not would be another quality, so yes or no. It's like binary, 1 or 0. That's what I love about logic, is it's very much binary. And I feel the world is just made of binary. It's made of pulses, ons and offs, and it may sound like Aristotelian logic, but that's what it seems like to me. So all R is an A proposition. And these A prop, I prop, E prop, O prop, those are the different propositions in logic. They all come from Latin. Logic is Latin-based, or at least it was first written in Latin form. I'm not too great on the history of logic, unfortunately. I'm just getting a hold of what I can do with logic, and I'm so pleased. I mean, the course has already paid for itself as far as I'm concerned. The fact that I could fully debunk the drug war on one piece of paper and show as clear as day it's illogical. You can't take two particulars and make a universal out of it. Now, these Venn diagrams down here are in the Boolean method. I think it's James Boole? I don't know, it might not be James, but again, I'm horrible on my logical history just because I haven't been taught it. I'm only getting the functional course on it, really. But in the Boolean logic, anybody else who's taken logic, you could attest for this. An I proposition would look like this in a Venn diagram, where S means your subject circle, P means your predicate circle, and of course the overlap here, which says that S depends on P. Now in the I proposition, the particular affirmative, going back up here to see what that really means, some ARC, some people take drugs, some people are addicts. Those are both true premises. You can mark an X right here, because that's dependent, at least one, you can say at least one is in this. It's right here, is dependent, S is dependent on P. Now, where you go to the A proposition, you can only shade out to show that it's not in this sector. So if it says all CRB, all people who take drugs become addicts, then you know that it cannot be in this subject. It cannot just be remaining in that circle. It has to be somewhere here. And what you could do in Aristotelian logic is put a circle around it to say that there, based on your observations, you could say that there was at least one seen to be in this subject in sector 2. Sector 1, 2, 3, and 4. But yeah, you cannot go from two I-prop premises to an A-prop conclusion. It's completely illogical, as I've shown and proven by the counterexample method. So, a bit of a learning course for anybody who hasn't taken logic. I was going to say logic, but yeah, it's very true what I've just shown to you. If you don't understand what I've shown, please ask questions, please comment below, and maybe rewind the video, because anybody who hasn't taken a course in logic, this could seem like a foreign language to. It didn't come naturally to me, I'll just say that. It took lots of studying, but now that I've got a good grip on it, I've just debunked the whole drug war. Just like that, guys. It's one giant illogical argument, and it's failing to solve anything. I mean, you want to look at the real side of the drug war, just the real facts of it. It's wasting taxpayer money. It's creating more crime because it's going underground, whereas we could have legitimate dispensaries for everything. I know this is a cannabis correction blog, but as far as policy goes for politics, I believe that every single drug should be legal, and there should be dispensaries, and there should be addiction centers to help people out. Instead of making people go to illegitimate dealers using dirty needles and having to suffer in silence while they slowly fall apart and break away from society, we could actually help people get over their addictive personalities, or at least put them on a path that is better than going to a back alley and getting hepatitis from some dirty needle. Of course, these are probably only the hard drugs that I'm referring to here, but even the hard drugs should be legal. You know, the argument I hear that I should probably write down to see if it follows this form, and I bet it would, that people make, is that if we legalized every single drug, we'd have a bunch of drug-addled maniacs. Well, no, look at it like this. There are already laws in place to put you in jail if you do something messed up on alcohol, right? You crash your car into someone, that's vehicular homicide while you're drunk. You could not handle your booze. But it doesn't mean everybody can't have booze. Again, I think that's probably going to be an I-prop going to an A-prop conclusion, but I'd have to write it out before I confirm it. But the same would happen. We have a police force who could be paid a lot better if we weren't wasting our taxpayer money on this pointless drug war propaganda. Don't you want police officers to be paid their just wages? I do. I personally like the police because they offer protection from lunatics. And unfortunately, they are being misused often for the strong arm of the corporate government. So, I would love to see a world where we could be friends with cops and I wouldn't have to worry about interrogation because I'm speaking my mind freely.